So, welcome to this episode of Alive and Thriving. I hope if you are listening, you are having an amazing day. I know I'm having a good day. I took my eldest daughter, it's school holidays. So, I tend to do a little bit less in the school holidays. I've been able to create that space in my business. So, we dropped the youngest at daycare. We went and got our nails done, which is just a nice thing to be able to do together. And now I am here. I'm excited. I have our tapping circle tonight. I love, love, love tapping circles. They are my favorite time of the month. So every second Wednesday, I host an online tapping circle, and it is a beautiful opportunity for anybody who wants to experience EFT, but also anyone who is seasoned with EFT and knows all of the fantastic benefits of tapping to come along and tap with me on different topics that are going to help to alleviate stress and really release the heaviness of the conditioning and the thoughts and the beliefs and things that we carry around that are really stopping you from feeling good in your life. So tonight's topic is calming anxiety. By the time this episode airs, I know the tapping circle will be gone, but you can actually access replays. And there's another one next month, second Wednesday of the month. And I believe next month we're doing money mindsets. So head along to the tapping circle link if it's something that you're interested in, and you can get all the information from there. Now, today we are talking about PMDD. So PMDD, or premenstrual dysphoric disorder, say that fast 3 times, is a condition that is absolutely no laughing matter. It affects many women who menstruate, and it is still largely really misunderstood. Now, today we're going to be discussing what PMDD is, how to recognize the symptoms of PMDD, how it can be diagnosed, but also tools and strategies for managing PMDD naturally. And to discuss this topic, we are going to be speaking with Heidi Hogarth. Heidi is a naturopath, nutritionist, PMDD survivor, and mum of two who lives in Adelaide in South Australia. She has been motivated. She's been motivated. Oh my goodness, I'm just on fire today. Heidi's been motivated by her debilitating and lonely experience with PMDD. So Heidi's passion in clinical practice lies in supporting others to regain their power over menstrual moods, to get off the emotional roller coasters and balance body and mind naturally so they can feel calm, confident, and empowered in themselves, in their relationships, in their work, and in their life. Heidi is a firm advocate for body-mind medicine, meaning that fortifying the biochemistry of your body and brain has a powerful, positive impact on mental and emotional well-being, because your brain, after all, is a flesh and blood organ of your physical body. And that actually follows on beautifully from last week's episode 59, where we talked about body-mind approaches to anxiety. So Heidi holds a Bachelor of Health Science, Bachelor of Arts, an advanced diploma of naturopathy, a diploma of nutrition, and metabolic balance practitioner certification. She is an accredited fellow of the Professional Association, the Australian Traditional Medicine Society, the ATMS, and professional member of the IAPMD. So if you are thinking, do I need to listen to this episode? If you experience a menstrual cycle and you feel like your symptoms cannot just be simply PMS, perhaps you get really bad anxiety before your period or during your period. Perhaps, your moods are just really, really seemingly uncontrollable. This episode is absolutely for you. This is Alive and Thriving, where we tackle all things that stand in the way of holistic well-being and self-care in life and as women in business. Join me for real and raw conversations and inspiring guests who are expert in their fields as we come back to life together, overcoming stress, anxiety, nourishing our mind, body, and emotions. I am your host, Jessica Reed, alternative therapist, life and wellbeing coach. And if you are ready to grow, heal, and thrive together, then you are in the right place. Oh, Heidi, welcome to Alive and Thriving. Heidi is a friend of mine, and I have known Heidi now for over 12 months, and she's a brilliant naturopath. I'm going to link all of Heidi's social information in the show notes, and you need to go over there. This is complete side note because I know you haven't even said hello yet, but you need to go over there onto Heidi's social media and follow her. And next time she does a food mood reboot, get in on it. Go and do that. I did that myself just before Christmas with Heidi, and it was fantastic. So, total side note, welcome, Heidi.
Awesome. Thanks, Jess. Thanks for having me here.
Oh, no, you're very welcome. I am really, really excited to talk about this topic today because I know that it is something, and I sort of mentioned in the introduction, there's not enough talk about it. And it's something that I don't really believe there's enough awareness of either. I'm chatting about PMDD. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, it's PMDD Awareness Month as we record this.
It is, yes.
Yes.
It's actually called PMD Awareness Month, Premenstrual Disorders.
Yeah.
There's a couple that are quite closely related, but similar, but different anyway.
Okay. Oh, good to know. So I'm really hoping that this episode is going to bring some awareness for women who feel like they've been struggling with what feels like more than PMS for them. I know in my personal experience, I thought I was going crazy with the way that my panic would play up around the time of my menstrual cycle. Just, all the things that I was experiencing that just felt like it shouldn't be normal. And yeah, I guess let's get into it. Let's just start chatting. I'm going to stop speaking and let you talk. Heidi, I introduced you a little bit in the beginning before we started recording, but I'm just wondering, could you share with our listeners a little bit more about you? And I'd love to know, because you mentioned in your bio that you have had experience with PMDD and sort of spoke of yourself as a PMDD survivor. I'd love to know how you ended up in this area of expertise and a little bit about your experience with that.
Okay, so my experience with PMDD goes back really, I'm now 49 and started menstruating when I was 12. And I just remember having a lot of turmoil from my late teens, probably earlier, but specific incidences I can remember from about my late teens. So it's a pretty long time, like 30, is that 30s? Yeah, about 30 years.
Yeah.
But I only heard of PMDD about 3 years ago.
Yeah.
And when I heard of the term, I knew exactly that described me, and that's what I'd been experiencing for all those years without having a clue that that's what it was, or that the diagnosis existed. So that's what I mean when it was lonely, because like you'd said, like I had these intense feelings before my period. Actually, I'd have to say my period was very irregular until my late 20s. And so it took a long time to connect the dots between my emotions and these very dark, depressive episodes that I'd have.
Yeah.
And then that's actually premenstrual. And then when I finally did connect the dots, at least I kind of knew, okay, well, then it's like I gaslit myself. I dismissed myself. Oh, it's just PMS. Like I didn't even, honor how I felt. I was ashamed and embarrassed to talk about how dark and awful and so debilitating these feelings were when it's just PMS.
Yeah.
So it was, a lot of shame and taboo attached to it about being mental health, about it being part of my menstrual cycle, that nobody knew what PMDD was, including not myself. I sought help. I saw a lot of counsellors and therapists of various kinds. So I've been a naturopath for about 20 years. So it was actually when I was studying naturopathy that I took herbal medicine to regulate my cycle. And
Mm.
that's when I noticed the connection.
Yeah.
So I've been surrounded by a lot of different therapists for, the past 30 years, 20 years.
Mm.
So I wasn't without help, but not a single person ever asked me if my symptoms related to my menstrual cycle. And I
Mm.
think, like, I'm not blaming anyone. It's just how it is. It's so so little known and misunderstood in all professions. So I saw doctors, psychologists, more alternative counselors, energy healers, acupuncturists, like everything. I worked in health
Mm.
retreats, so I was exposed to a lot of different therapies. Yeah, so that's why I'm quite passionate about awareness, because even somebody listening to this might start to recognize their own symptoms. I mean, that's how I found out about it. It was another friend and colleague who posted something about PMDD on their socials, and I just went bing, like light bulbs went off. I was like,
Yeah.
oh my God, this explains the past 30 years of my life.
Yeah.
And since I've started talking about it more openly as well, a lot of people have come to me, even friends, saying, I think that's me. What do I do about it? Where do
Yeah.
I go? How do I get help? Thank you for talking about it. So yeah, there's still a long way to go. So the awareness month is really important. But yeah, we do need to get a lot more awareness out there and acceptance as well. So
Mm.
there's still people out there who don't really believe that it's a thing, or
Yeah.
that it is just PMS. In fact, I don't like
Amen.
it when it's compared to
Sorry,
PMS.
I said, are they
Sorry?
men? Are they men? Sorry, that might be
Yeah.
inappropriate.
I know. Yeah, well, they are. But there's also female doctors. So I'm in all the PMDD support groups as well. Like, that was the other, like, amazing, like, my world opened when I heard about PMDD, and
Mm.
the community out there is incredible. And I felt like, I've missed out on that for the past 30 years. I could have had that support, even if it wasn't practical support. It's just that emotional support. Somebody else is going through what you do, what you are, and somebody else understands how I'm feeling. Somebody else is struggling as well. So it's that, the camaraderie, the community support that is wonderful. But it was something that I missed out on for sure. So
Yeah.
so what was I going to? Oh, I got sidetracked, because in those communities you hear these awful stories about going to their doctors, and even female doctors say, "Well, suck it up. This is just,
Mm.
you're a woman. This is what happens to women. Just go. I don't know."
Yeah. Take some Panadol and get a heat pack.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
was
or
going
some
to say
Nurofen
Valley
or
of
something.
Mummy's Little Helper is what I was going to refer to. Yeah, go glass of wine. This is how mums cope.
Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Mm.
it's big.
Absolutely. And you created, again, another side note, you have your own PMDD support group on Facebook, don't you? And I I heard about PMDD through you when I started following you. I think I met you through the Social Methods Society, and then I started following you. And that's where I really sort of learned about PMDD from. And a little bit like you, hearing about it, you kind of click and you're like, oh, okay, I understand. And I actually, the title of this episode, I'm saying, more than just PMS.
Yeah.
And I love that you said that a few times, because we are told it's just PMS and you just live with it and you just deal with it. And for some people, I mean, for me, I know it always really, my panic just would go to a next level, and it was purely physical in my body, always coinciding, but I never really made that connection along with some other physical symptoms and things that I was experiencing. But I know for some people, when you talk about those real depressive levels and that real emotional roller coaster, and I know for me also that I'd get a wave of not anger, like, well, I guess anger, like really extreme. I'm okay one minute, that I'm in rage, absolute
Yes.
rage the next.
Very
But
sudden.
the amount of and it felt uncontrollable, and it felt a little scary too, because I remember thinking, what's wrong with me? Like, I'm feeling good, my anxiety's under control. What's wrong with me?
Mm.
Um, and then I know for me, it was always, again, because people make jokes about PMS rage and things like that. And so I'm like, oh, this is obviously just how it is. But
Right.
then as a, as an alternative therapist myself, I work with so many women who come to me for anxiety, and they talk about it being worse, so much worse around this menstrual cycle time for them. And
Yeah.
I'm always saying, you need to go and look at this Facebook group. go go into Heidi's Facebook group. And I remember jumping in that group when you first started it, and now there's hundreds of people in there.
There's about 800 people in there now.
Wow.
Yeah.
That is phenomenal. And
Yeah.
that just goes to show though just how much support these women are needing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Mm.
Can you tell us, Heidi, when we are talking about PMDD and we're talking about PMS and we're saying it's more than just PMS, what sort of symptoms are we talking about
Mm.
when we're looking at PMDD versus PMS?
Right. So there's a combination of physical and mental emotional symptoms, but really it's the mental and emotional symptoms that people struggle with the most and that really characterize PMDD. And that is anxiety, like absolutely debilitating anxiety, despairing depression, feelings of absolute worthlessness, thoughts of self-harm and suicidal ideation, even suicide attempts are not uncommon.
Mm-hmm.
And rage is huge. So, and these are things that that really negatively impact people's lives. You know, not being able to leave the house to go to work, raging at the kids, ruining their relationships with their partners, quitting jobs. Like this is like really a time that people lose their jobs or quit in a rage. So it's really sometimes like the easiest way I describe it is it's when PMS ruins your life.
Mm-hmm.
So it's yeah, again, and that rage can be so sudden as well as like a switch. Like this is when I realized that, oh my gosh, it's not just about me anymore. So until I had kids, I was the one who suffered. You know, I took everything internally and my symptoms were more depressive. I had a lot of self-loathing, really low self-worth. But then when the kids came along, and you know, there's so much with mum life and the changes there as well, but and having no support and things like that. Oh my gosh, I could talk about half an hour or days about the support that new mums need. But I started, this is when the rage came out.
Yeah.
And that's also when I realized I've got to get my shit together.
Yeah.
Am I allowed to swear a little
Yes.
bit?
Yep. Shit is fine.
Because it's not just about me. I've
Yeah.
got these little people to look after, and I don't want to mess them up.
Yeah.
I don't want them, you know, I need to model good emotional regulation for them. I need them to know that they're loved, that it's not their fault.
Yeah.
And that's when my drive to sort my own head out came out. That's just a bit of a side note on the rage. But yeah, so those are three of the biggest symptoms, but then there can be really deep fatigue, brain fog. Like I have a client who's super switched on. She's so smart. And then she says when she's premenstrual, her brain goes mushy.
Yeah.
She works in banking, so she's dealing with money and big figures. And you
Oh,
know,
and
she's very
you need a logical mind for that, don't you?
right. Yeah, she needs to be switched on. Like a small mistake can have like huge consequences. Um, so that yeah, brain fog and but it's really the biggest ones that affect people are the anxiety, depression, and rage. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So how would somebody who is resonating with what you're saying, how would they actually go about a diagnosis for something like this that is not so commonly known? And you mentioned earlier, that some people aren't recognizing, in medical professions, some people aren't recognizing it as something,
Yeah.
as a diagnosis. So how do people go about
Yeah.
finding out for themselves if this is something? And we'll talk about managing it in a moment, in case you're listening, wondering, okay, yep, that's me, but what do I do?
Yeah, I do.
But I'm curious, let's get to the diagnosis
Yeah.
first. How do you go
Yeah.
about figuring that out?
The only way to diagnose it is by tracking your symptoms for at least 2 cycles, but preferably 3 or more, and to recognize the patterns.
Yeah.
Because the misdiagnosis is quite common as well, because there's this kind of Jekyll and Hyde kind of aspect to the symptoms. Like, people just describe a switch going off or a switch going on. That was definitely my experience with rage. I'd be like, okay, kids are really annoying me, but I'm cool, I'm calm, and then suddenly snap,
Yeah.
screaming and slamming doors.
Yeah.
So that can be misdiagnosed as bipolar disorder, even borderline personality disorder, schizophrenia. I had a client who was heavily sedated on very heavy medications for 10 years before they realized that that's not her diagnosis, it's actually PMDD.
Oh, wow.
So the
Oh,
only
that's
way,
scary, isn't it?
so you could go to a doctor with symptoms like this sudden change, and you might end up with a diagnosis like that. But if you can
Yeah.
go and say it's happening premenstrually, and I think
Yeah.
it might be this, even, sadly, a lot of us have to self-advocate in the doctor's office. Um, but hopefully it's getting a bit more out there. Like, even my own GP knew about it. I didn't have to explain anything to her, so that was cool. So yeah, the only way is by tracking symptoms
Yeah.
and bringing it to your GP, or you might be referred to a gynecologist or a psychiatrist,
Yeah.
even a endocrinologist sometimes. So, and sometimes there's good reason for that, like the thyroid. Are we going to talk about
You
causes?
can,
Let's
oh
just
yeah,
stick to
causes.
diagnosis.
I know that was actually going to be my next question.
Oh, was
So
it?
no,
Okay.
yeah, lead straight in. Can you hear
Yeah.
my dog barking, by the
No.
way? Oh, good. Okay, I think this microphone's blocking it out, but my little 14-year-old dog is deaf. So if
Oh.
I say, Cleo, shush, she's not going to hear me. So I just closed the door, but she is yapping and yapping and yapping away. So I was hoping that wasn't interrupting this.
No, I can't hear
Um,
anything.
causes, absolutely. That was what I was literally about to ask you. Is there anything in particular or anything that you're aware of or combination of things that can cause or contribute to PMDD?
There isn't a known cause, but there are some conditions that have similar symptoms.
Yeah.
So, like, we've discussed a few of those mental health conditions, but also, like, quite often a GP or endocrinologist would do a thyroid check, because a depression or high anxiety can be a thyroid type of symptom.
Yeah.
In terms of hormonal imbalances, like a situation of estrogen dominance, which can be high estrogen or low progesterone, or just in ratio, like an imbalance in the ratios. Like, they're obviously fluctuating all the time,
Yeah.
but if there's too much estrogen compared to progesterone, then that can also have PMDD type symptoms. And that's also a reason why the symptoms are so strong premenstrually. So, for example, you referred to anxiety, and it's so much worse premenstrually. So, yeah, because of the effect of hormones have on your neurotransmitters.
Yeah.
So estrogen affects your serotonin and dopamine and glutamate. So, for example, if estrogen's high and then glutamate is too high, then that can lead to high anxiety.
Yeah. Right.
And on the other side, when progesterone's low, and that's normally what I see in clinic, is low progesterone, high estrogen. If there is a hormonal impact, when there's
Yeah.
not always,
Yeah.
then progesterone affects GABA. And so
Yeah.
when you've got low progesterone, you've got lower stimulation of the GABA receptors, which is your inner chill pill. And this is your anxiety clientele, good friends with GABA.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Then there can be, there's just understimulation of the GABA receptors.
Yeah.
But in that case, so just a little side note on the symptoms getting worse premenstrually, that could be premenstrual exacerbation of an existing condition. So when you might have generalized anxiety and it's so much worse before your
Yeah.
period, then that would be classified as premenstrual exacerbation rather than PMDD.
Right. Wow. Yeah.
Yeah. What else? I said, but causes, yeah. So when it comes down to, so like those are really uh, diagnosis of elimination. So
Yeah.
you might go through a few processes of testing for this and that to eliminate those as a diagnosis. And when there's nothing left, they say, oh,
Yeah.
okay, it's PMDD
Right.
because we can't explain it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's
Oh,
very
I feel
little
like
research.
I'm resonating with premenstrual hang on, I can't speak. Premenstrual exacerbation. That's sort of, hmm, that might be something for me to keep,
Yeah. Well, in
yeah,
that
keep in
case,
my
you're on the
mind.
right track anyway, because with premenstrual exacerbation, you really treat the cause, you treat the original kind of
Yeah.
condition.
Yeah. Yeah. Although I definitely
Oh, look
resonated with the
for that.
rage, the sad
Yeah.
premenstrual rage,
Mm.
that is like a switch. Where
Yeah.
1 minute you're absolutely fine, and the next it's like uncontrollable. And then afterwards, you're like, who was that? What happened to me?
Yeah.
And then, as you said, there's all these things that come along with that. There's the shame and there's, the guilt and all the things. But I know we'll talk about some treatments in a minute, but I know for me, tapping helps with that.
Yeah.
And learning how to be self-aware enough
Mm-hmm.
to actually know when that switch is almost about to flick, if you can catch
Yes.
it. If you can catch it.
100%. Yes.
But yeah, let's chat about quickly though, when we're talking about treatments or just support, in terms of what we can do to help ourselves. So let's say we've come to the conclusion that we're likely dealing with PMDD. And perhaps we've gone down a conventional path and we've been put on some kind of hormonal birth control or some sort of antidepressant or something. Do you find that they are relatively effective for PMDD?
They can be, yes. But it varies so much. So, like we mentioned, the support group, sometimes you'll see in there, oh, I've just started Yaz, and oh my gosh, I've had no symptoms. Yeah, so Yaz is a birth control.
Yeah.
It's amazing, and like you guys should all try Yaz. And then there'll be 40 comments, 20 of them will say, oh, I tried yours and it just like I just felt so much worse.
Yeah.
And the others say, oh yeah, okay, great, I want to try it. Or oh yes, it also works for me. So it's
Mm,
really variable. What works for one doesn't always work for the next.
yeah.
But I've seen more commonly that Yaz and Zoli are the two birth controls that seem to have they seem to be more popular as effective treatments.
Hmm.
And the same with antidepressants. So sometimes they're amazing, sometimes people can feel worse on them.
Yeah.
And either they have there's still a bit of an experimental or an adjustment period. So it can still take 2 or 3 months to for your body to adjust to accept the medication, to
Yeah.
sort it out. Once you start putting chemical medications into your system, then your brain has to get the message to stop making your own. So
Yeah.
that just take a little bit longer to even that out. Yeah, but unfortunately, even in medicine, there's no quick fix. There's no easy answer. There's always an adjustment period, or almost always.
Mm,
Usually, some side effects.
yeah.
There's just a little bit of trial and error involved in medications as well.
Yeah.
But when they work, amazing. Like I see people on medications, and I am probably one of the few naturopaths that would be happy for them. Like, obviously not a fan of them myself, but I've experienced the dark times on
Yeah.
PMDD,
Oh,
and I've
absolutely.
even, I mean, I must admit, I've thought about like maybe I should just try these. Like
Yeah.
maybe it will work for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I've used antidepressants in the past,
Mhm.
absolutely. If I'm being in a big hole and I can't look after myself, can't do the things that
Yeah.
I should be able to keep myself well,
Yeah.
then I've used antidepressants just to get out of the hole so that I can have the energy and motivation to put my self-care back into place and carry on.
Yeah, absolutely. They can certainly serve they can certainly serve a really great purpose in terms of getting you to a place where you can then get back to functioning
Yeah.
or, dealing with whatever those underlying causes may
Yes.
be. But
Yeah.
sometimes you need help to get out of that hole first. Absolutely. Anybody who listens knows that I am not against medications as an alternative therapist, but my personal experience with them was that after trying so many from 2009 up until a few years ago, I could never handle the side effects for me personally in my body. And there was this one, I know this is completely off topic, but there was this one where I remember looking at my daughter. I had just one at the time, and I was looking at her and she was playing and she was laughing, and I felt dead inside. I felt nothing. And I was like, I'm not staying on this. And then there was one that caused me to gain like 6 kilos around my tummy in 6 weeks, and all sorts of different side effects, and other ones that made me feel more spaced out than anything else. So from my personal experience, I mean, I'm somebody who has half a Panadol and I'm, knocked on my butt. So I can't handle it.
Yeah.
But all the power to anybody who is using that as a tool. But I know that there are natural and alternative treatments that you can also use either complementary with your current treatment plan, or when you're ready to, and if you want to, start to look at things, as an alternative when you're ready to sort of come off the chemicals. So let's talk about those sorts of treatments for
Yeah, sure.
PMDD. So
Yeah, I do
you've
see
got a good
people.
plan, don't you? Sorry, you've got a great mental health plan for yourself in
Oh,
terms of
yeah,
natural PMD management. PMD,
I
yeah.
do. Yeah, it seems
Good.
to be working.
Good. Good.
I'm pretty
I
much
only
still
ask because I see you
I'm
talk
on, no,
about
no,
it.
I'm on like day 3 now. Um, yeah, so I'd go with a bit of a step-by-step process with clients. So I see people who do want to come off the medications, and it's not always just because they want to go natural, but they might want to become pregnant. So that's a big reason that people want to come off birth control.
Yep.
And side effects, but it's usually pregnancy actually. So yeah, we can create a safety net there for when you finally come off it.
Yeah.
So food for me is number one, because
Mm.
you know, you hear it all the time, you are what you eat, but your body has no other way of making new cells, of repairing cells, of keeping everything operating apart from what you put in your mouth, and then what you digest and absorb as well. Apart from, you breathe a few things in, and you absorb a few things through your skin, but the bulk of your body, and that includes your brain, which
Mm-hmm.
is a physical flesh and blood organ
Yes.
of your body,
Yeah.
and it actually requires extra resources, like takes up something like 20% of your energy and resources from
Yeah.
your food, compared to only being about 2% of your body weight.
Wow.
So that's number one for me, because if you I think of it as like making a cake. If your brain is trying to make hormones and neurotransmitters, the first time you make it, you might have enough ingredients and it's all good and things work well. If you don't replenish it, you need to consistently replenish your nutritional status. Next time you go to make the cake, maybe you've got no sugar, so you can still make a cake, but it won't taste the same. The
Yeah.
next time, maybe you've got no raising agent, or you've only got gluten-free flour instead, and it'll be a different texture, and it won't feel the same, and it won't operate the same. So it's the
Yeah.
same with making your hormones and neurotransmitters and getting your nervous system operating in the effective, functional way as well. So food first for me. And then I'd be looking at, and the other, so there's just so many firsts. First step. Actually, even before food, I love to dive into menstrual cycle awareness and cycle syncing and cyclical self-care.
Mm-hmm.
So that involves tracking yourself, not just for your symptoms. So a lot of people use cycle tracking to predict ovulation, to prevent or enhance, or to support pregnancy, to predict when the period's coming, or to predict when your premenstrual time is, and to track the symptoms so that you can show your doctor that this is when they're happening. But menstrual cycle awareness brings it a step further, and tracking yourself through the whole cycle, good and bad, include your energy levels, your motivation, your happiness levels, how calm you are, your creativity, your sleep, libido. If you can track all of those throughout the whole cycle, then you'll see phases of, your good times and bad.
Yeah.
And there's gifts and challenges with each part of the menstrual cycle. So I love to get people, even in the premenstrual time, to recognize that there's powers there too. Sometimes that rage is there to say something's got to change, like this is not okay, right? It's because your hormones have dropped. You don't have your feel good like estrogen going, everything's wonderful. It's the veil is lifted and you see this isn't right. This is overstepping my boundaries. This is not in alignment with my values. So that can be really powerful. So I'd really encourage that, not to dismiss the rage or suppress it, but really explore what it's there for. So that kind of self-awareness, like you mentioned before, with is what I think is the most important aspect of the menstrual cycle awareness. So firstly, you get the self-awareness, and then hopefully self-acceptance, and then working with your natural cycle instead of constantly fighting against it. I think that's a really important part of healing, and that's before you've taken any medications or changed your diet in any way or taken any herbs or supplements. So first step is the awareness of the positives and negatives of each phase in the menstrual cycle.
I love that. I read a book recently, and for the life of me, I actually can't remember what it was called now, but in this moment, but it was all about I'm learning about sort of running my business by making friends with my cycle. And working with the times where I am meant to be creative and out socializing, and working with the times where I am meant to be more reflective and retreating, and really listening to my body first in terms of how it impacts the way that I'm doing my business. And that has been game changing for me this year. It's only sort of been 2 months, but but there's so much awareness that needs to come first. But this book was talking about you're making friends with your cycle. So you sort of, I know for me, you grow up thinking, oh shit, I've got my period, or oh my God, why is it here? Or oh no, the cramps, and really, I guess, resisting it. And as I say that, I just think about all the things that I've been teaching in my 21-day anxiety reset recently, where we're like, no, we don't resist, we accept. But it comes into that as well. You spend so long resisting it, fighting it, speaking negatively even about the cycle. And so then we've got these thoughts and these beliefs around what we're going to experience every month, and we start to feel even dread around the fact that it's coming, and we're resentful of the period. And I'll own it, I was resentful of the period. And so just making friends with the cycle, and as you said, leaning into what is your body telling you in this time. So, okay, we've got the rage, what triggered it, and listening to what you were saying, listening to what your body is saying. So, I just really wanted to second self-awareness, I guess, and making friends with your cycles. I know for me, in terms of preserving my energy, on a business perspective, it's been brilliant.
Because sometimes you can, like I see this a lot in clients, they can tend to really overextend themselves in the first half of the cycle, in the follicular phase or the ovulatory phase, when they feel good. So it's like, quick, I've got to get everything done now because this is when I feel good and I'm going to crash. And that can actually be counterproductive, because then they've got nothing left in the tank for the next week when they really need it. That's when the fatigue drops and the emotions are haywire. So part of that self-awareness is also, like, the next step is the self-care, and making sure not to overcommit, overextend yourself in those times. as well. Yeah, because that can be a
Yeah,
trap too.
absolutely. So self-awareness, self-care, and food are some
Yeah.
great places to start.
Yes.
What can we do in terms of helping ourselves in the symptoms? Um, is there anything else that you think can potentially help to prevent or alleviate
Mm.
the experience?
Yeah, so and a lot of naturopathic management is prevention,
Mhm.
and would use like we'd be looking into some herbal and nutritional supplements. So a lot of
Yeah.
herbs are really great to regulate the cycle or to even out the hormone levels. Also, there's some fantastic nervous system herbs for
Mhm.
great for your stress levels, for your
Yeah.
nervous system, for the brain, and all kinds of things.
Yeah.
Like a really easy one people can find anyway is passion flower. It's a
Mhm.
beautiful, nice, relaxing herb. It's excellent for anxiety
Yeah.
and can really help with the insomnia as well.
Mm.
Um, some herbs you need to be careful of because they can interact with medications.
Yeah.
So yeah, you need to talk to someone.
Talk to
I
Heidi.
do I do share on my Insta like which ones are safe, like which ones are fine to use anytime.
Yeah.
Um,
Need to book a call with Heidi.
yeah, it's all good. And then, but when it comes to symptom management, that's where things can get tricky.
Mhm.
And actually, I mean, I'm a fan of EFT, and that has helped me enormously, like in the moment when I'm fully anxious or so down and low on myself, then using EFT to acknowledge and process the emotions, to
Yeah.
just get it out of my system. Before I found EFT, journaling was really a powerful tool for me as well,
Mhm.
because
Yeah.
we can tend to, like with anxiety and depression, we can tend to spiral inside our own minds and
Yeah.
really bring me down further. But in expressing it as you do with a round of tapping or
Yeah.
in a journal, so I likened it to just sorting my thoughts out and putting
Yeah.
it on paper. It was just a way to make sense of them. And so when I was, much more very, very, very reserved, I would never have been doing social media or podcasting even like 4 years ago. Um, yeah, then journaling really helped a lot then.
Yeah.
There are a lot of remedies that can work quickly. So another favorite I like that is quite safe. It is safe. Very. I mean, before I say what it is, I'm like, is it? Is it? Yes, it is. Oh, am I saying the wrong thing? But it's
Oh,
really awesome for anxiety, and that's L-theanine. So
yes.
it's
Yeah.
amino acid powder. I haven't seen it over the counter. You might still have to get it from a nutritionist or naturopath,
Mhm.
but it's very inexpensive and it works very quickly, like within 20 minutes.
Yeah.
Um, and that stimulates the GABA receptors to
Ah,
bring you calm, bring the everything's okay feeling. So that's a really
yeah.
nice one to use symptomatically.
Yeah. Now, I'm not saying the wrong thing here either, but I guess disclaimer, always just check if you're on any medications or pregnant or whatever whatever your situation is, always just check with a health professional, I guess, before you start taking anything. But
Yeah.
I had some fabulous relief with L-theanine, saffron, and ashwagandha.
Oh, beautiful.
Um, and that was just, yeah, quick and effective. And really, it just felt calm. Like it was just a really nice feeling inside my body. So,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yeah.
It changes like from a it's this kind of it's an I don't care feeling, but in a more of a carefree way than a careless
Mm,
way
yeah,
is how I describe the feelings with those. Oh, like I love ashwagandha as well. That's another one that I recommend often as a hard worker in my dispensary.
yeah,
It's just so good for the nervous system and the
yeah,
adrenal glands and the stress response, and
yeah,
it's a good, nourishing, supportive, restorative herb, we call it.
yeah,
Yeah, put
yeah.
put you back together.
So you mentioned stress. You mentioned the stress response. And my listeners understand exactly what that means, don't you? Yes, because I
Yeah.
talk about it all the time.
Yeah.
So, can can stress and therefore the impact that that has in our body in terms of switching us into a stress response, can that impact our PMDD symptoms?
Yes, 100%, 1,000%. Yeah, because the stress hormones just mess everything else up.
Yeah.
So with cortisol, yeah, it sounds like you have quite an educated audience.
If they're regular listeners, then they hear about this all the time. But let's
Yeah,
just talk as if they're not. Yes.
yeah. So well, one of the biggest impacts that cortisol has is in shunting production away from progesterone.
Mhm.
So progesterone should be a nice GABA stimulator.
Yeah, mouthful something.
Yeah, so yeah, progesterone is a beautiful, calming, relaxing hormone that stimulates the GABA receptors to
Mhm.
give you that nice inner calm. It's also the one that's like, I don't really care about going to parties. I just want to sit at home, nesting, being cozy, curled up on the couch with a cup of tea.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of everything's okay. Like I don't care about anything because everything's okay. Um,
Mm.
but yeah, when cortisol's in the mix, then we have less progesterone. So production of progesterone is shunted away, and therefore you get less of that nice, happy inner chill of
Mhm.
the GABA. And it also impacts, well, as you know, like adrenaline. So that can lead to more anxiety and hyperstimulation and ragey kind of neuro excitability.
Yeah.
It can impact the thyroid hormones as well. So
Mhm.
it can really mess with everything. So there's such a complex web between all of our hormones, especially the steroid hormones and neurotransmitters and everything that when stress is in play,
Yeah.
basically almost no way you can feel okay. Like
Yeah.
you are on alert, you are ready for action, you're
Yeah.
looking for danger, you're looking for how to survive. You know, there's no everything's okay about that. This is
Mm.
a survival mechanism.
Yeah. So you can
Um,
see how that can directly exacerbate the symptoms that we've
yes,
spoken about of PMDD, that depressive, I guess getting down into that dorsal nervous system, where
yeah,
depression lives.
that
And
negative,
yeah,
yeah, perspective as
yeah,
well. Yeah,
absolutely. Or staying
things
in
are
that
wrong. Yeah.
sympathetic fight or flight, high anxiety, panic response.
Mm.
Um, the rage, which I guess also comes in that sympathetic response as well. So managing stress mentally and environmentally and physically within your body
Yeah.
sounds like a really key player to me
100%, yeah.
in
And I
managing your
talk
PMDD.
about, yeah, sorry to interrupt you, but
No,
yeah, I
no,
love
that's okay.
to talk about not just managing stress, but actively reducing it.
Yeah,
So
me too.
just saying no, and just saying no, put up
Yeah.
the boundaries. Do not, if it's not of course, I'm not saying shirk your responsibilities and commitments. Of course, we need to, like we're mums, we've got things to do, we've got little people to look after, jobs to go to. I'm not saying to not do them, but if it's not essential, like I've got really good
Mm,
at saying no to supervising school excursions.
yeah.
Like it's just something I do not have time for.
Yeah. Yeah. What is
It's
that
not
extra
like
thing that's going to tip you over?
yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
there's certain times that I will, absolutely. I will check my cycle calendar and see, okay, yeah, I'll be in a good mood then. Or not at that time because I am not going to have the patience to deal with 30, 8-year-olds or whatever it might be.
Yeah,
Sit on a bus with
absolutely.
the noise. That's another big symptom
Oh,
is sensory,
yeah.
so overstimulation.
Yeah. Oh, I love that you bring that up. I get that. I feel that on every level. For me, light is a massive overstimulant for me, but then the noise, and I've actually been working with a kinesiologist. We've been trying to balance my left and right brain, and I generally walk around at the moment with a cotton bud in my ear, in my left ear,
Mm,
because again, yeah, we're trying to get this balance. It's just where we got to with my body.
yeah.
But because noise is so overstimulating for me, that yeah, when I've been in these moments in these states, and for me particularly, premenstrual.
Mm.
um,
Yeah. Yeah.
for
So
that
you're
was the last couple of
yeah.
days for me. And it can just be that there's just a little bit of background noise, and then all of a sudden one thing is enough
Yes.
to just tip it over. And then suddenly for me, I start getting in my stomach like this, the butterfly feeling, and then it's the muscle tension, and then it's the, oh God, I'm feeling really on edge, or am I getting anxious, or I'm about to panic. And it can be from something as simple as noise being
Yeah.
too
Right.
overstimulating for my brain in that moment. So I love
Mhm.
that you brought up those things, because I feel like I've had conversations with people where they haven't understood that the noise or the lights, that these things can be too much for a brain that's already overstimulated,
Yeah.
for a brain that's already in that stress response, and for a nervous system that's already overstimulated. Add in those little bits of extra noises, um,
Mm.
particularly high pitched crying sounds. Send your nervous system into overdrive. And not just, yeah, I mean, I know if you're a mum, you're probably laughing, going, oh, yeah, I feel that on every bit, but it
Yes,
actually
I can avoid
does.
that.
It actually, your nervous system is particularly sensitive to those sounds,
Mm.
um, or really, really low growling type sounds.
Mm.
And so those will actually keep you over heightened and
Yeah.
overstimulated. And
Yeah.
just another little random
Yeah.
fact I
I
thought
can
I'd throw
feel
in
my
off topic.
skin crawling as you talk about it. I get the skin crawl up the back of my neck. Like,
Oh,
oh, that
yeah.
tension in my trapezius muscles.
Yeah. Oh,
For me, it's
yes.
also when there's too many. So, like, the
Mm.
TV's on, and then my daughter walks in with the phone on TikTok, and my
Yeah.
son's trying to talk to me, and it's like, there's
Yeah.
too many sources coming in.
Oh, I understand. That's my partner with the phone always loud on TikTok. I can't stand. And then you try, yeah, and it is, and it's too many sources, and then it just takes one extra thing then for you to just be like, no,
Yeah.
that's too much, too much.
Mm.
So okay, so yeah, managing stress,
Yeah.
preventing stress. I love what you said about actively preventing stress. For me, one of the questions I ask a lot of clients is what is within your control, because
Yeah.
what I often find is a lot of our stress that's coming from our mind is coming
Mhm.
from the things that we are trying to control that we can't or we shouldn't be,
Yeah.
that are just really need to be working on acceptance rather than control.
Mhm.
So that's a big thing, and regularly intervening that stress response from a physical perspective, I guess, is my little input into that, doing the things that are going to help to regulate your nervous system, like, your exercise, your tapping, just quickly on tapping and cortisol, because Heidi, you're talking about how cortisol just wreaks such havoc in terms of how it interferes with the neurotransmitters. And I love that you spoke about that, because that's not something that that's not my area of expertise. And so, um, there was a study conducted last year here in Australia. It was a blind study, and there were three control groups. One of them, and they all had their cortisol levels tested before they went into their blind group. So one group was allocated to reading a magazine for an hour, and their cortisol levels actually went up on average by 2% for that hour. Then, and this was, I think it was conducted, it might have been at the Bond University. I know we're supposed to give details of studies. So Dr. Peter Stapleton, who's a lead
Right.
researcher in EFT, she conducted this study. It was a replica of a study that was conducted a few years ago, I believe maybe by Dawson Church. But anyway, so there was the magazine group that went up around 2%. Then there was a group that was allocated to psychoeducation. So they spent an hour talking about what they could be doing to better manage their EFT symptoms. So that talk only therapy had a 19% reduction on average for that group in cortisol levels, which is fantastic in itself. But then the EFT group had on average a 43% reduction in their cortisol levels just in that 1 hour.
Yeah.
So I guess what I'm saying is, again, tapping really effective for stress, for lowering your stress response.
Mhm.
But it's not only just about not feeling stressed and thinking, oh, I feel calmer now, but it's
Mm.
actually about the physical havoc that it's going to
Yeah.
reach it's what it's going to do inside of your body.
Yeah.
It's the long-term impact that this long-term hormones are going to have. So yeah, if you're managing PMDD symptoms or PMS exasperation, Stress management. Absolutely.
Mhm.
I have one more question for you, if that's okay. Just because you mentioned mums, and I'm thinking stress and I'm thinking sleep, right?
Mm.
I know for me, in terms of the way that I feel, just in terms of my anxiety, I shouldn't say my anxiety. I don't like to own it. Just in terms
Mhm.
of when I experience anxiety, um, if I don't sleep, I can almost guarantee that I'm going to have a bad day in terms of the way that my nervous system is functioning.
Yeah.
How important is sleep in terms of managing PMDD and symptoms?
Oh, sleep is important for everything. Really, I hate these people who say, I don't hate anybody. People say, I'll sleep when I'm dead. We don't value sleep. We're supposed to be burning the candle at both ends. We've
Yeah.
glorified busy and
Yeah.
overwork. But sleep impacts so much, your digestion, your nervous system, your mental well-being, your immune
Yeah.
system, your digestive system. I mean, sleep is when not only your body rests and repairs and protects itself and integrates and does all these amazing things. Your brain does as well. So
Mm.
your brain detoxes. Then you are creating new cells. I don't know, it's just a reboot. Yeah, sleep, absolutely, 100% need
Yeah.
it. I don't know. Could talk for days or like just stop it there.
Well, I'll just quickly acknowledge people who are in a season of life, obviously, that I feel like I'm just coming out of a little bit now, that season of life where your sleep may not be fully within your control.
Mm,
Um, but if you're not in that little people season of life where you're working on somebody else's sleep schedule, um, prioritizing sleep is, yeah, absolutely something, as you just said, all of the things that are happening within your body, the fact that your brain is detoxing and your body is repairing, your cells are regenerating, and all these things are happening when you sleep.
yeah.
I heard, and I could be wrong, is it between, you might be able to correct me, is it between the hours of 10 and 2 where the body is doing that real like repair, that like
Yeah.
real, yeah, all the
I,
things.
I
I'm
confirm that
using my
I've
hands. You
also
can't
read
see if
that.
you're listening to audio. I'm like all the things.
Yeah, I've also read that that's the most important few hours. But
Yeah.
anything, like especially if you've got young kids, any sleep is
Yeah.
really
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
And it's not completely out of your control. So I know as a mum, like when the kids are in bed, there's a tendency to like, oh, I need, this is my time now, and this is when I'll watch TV or scroll social media and that kind of thing. So really being mindful of not overstimulating yourself, not I'm totally guilty of in the early days. Oh my goodness, my daughter just never slept at night and didn't sleep in the day either. It's always like, oh, luckily you're so lovable because like this is really hard. Um,
Because I'm being tortured right now.
yeah, so I ended up becoming dependent on caffeine in the days to get me
Mhm.
through. And then my husband was working late, long hours. He was never home before the kids were in bed. So I'd be doing that evening, the witching hour, the
Yeah.
baths and bedtime on my own as well. And uh, wine became my friend.
Mhm.
And it was just so unhealthy because neither of those things really helped my sleep at all and didn't even make me feel better in the moment after a while. Like it, at the start, yes, probably, but your body also quickly adjusts to those things. You build up
Yeah.
a tolerance to caffeine and alcohol.
Yeah.
So yeah, I would
Yeah.
just say,
And it's stimulating those happiness responses in your brain
yeah,
too, so that you actually start to believe that you are relaxing or
yes,
that it is helping you feel good,
yeah,
as well.
that's right. Yeah, but then it deadens it for times that you're not taking
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
be wary of that trap. Learn from my mistake.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. Oh my goodness. I feel like there is just so much gold in this conversation. Heidi, do you have any resources or anything that our audience can? I'm going to link your website. So if they head over to your website, what will they find over there?
Oh yeah, there's freebies scattered all over it. There's
Perfect.
2 especially on my most pages. I
Mhm.
think there were so many that I thought, I've got to do something about this. It just looks so messy with all these sign-up forms all over the place. But 2 I think really helpful things, like if you are finding that this is resonating and you think you might have PMDD, then there's one called the PMDD roadmap, and
Mhm.
that's like the first steps to take when you are looking at managing PMDD naturally or holistically. And the other good one is the Balanced Mind meal formula. So that's
Mm.
all about eating for mental health.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and I recently updated that and added in some recipes and
Oh,
little
wow.
sample meal plans and things like that. So it's pretty juicy these days.
I love that. I used your meal plan when I did your food mood reboot, and no one in my family complained about what I cooked for those 4 weeks. And
Okay.
they were delicious. Really,
Oh,
really, really easy to follow, really delicious.
awesome.
So that's really cool that you're popping that in a free resource.
Yeah, well, it's a sample day. So,
Sample day,
yeah.
amazing. But how fantastic that people can go to your website and get that. So I will link your website. Where can we find you on social media?
Oh, at Heidi Hogarth _ naturopath, or
Yep.
the PMDD Naturopath. And that's probably where I'm most interesting. My website is in dire need of updating, but I always updating the socials, and things get exciting on there. I'm quite entertaining
Perfect.
sometimes. I like doing a bit of silliness as well. So yeah, lots of free tips and ideas and strategies on there as well to have a look at.
Excellent. So you can head on to Facebook and join Heidi's support group. It is a free Facebook group as well. Lots of gold in there, but I would really encourage you also just to reach out to Heidi, go and say hi on Instagram, go and tell her that you've listened to this episode and just start the conversation. Start the
Mm.
conversation. And if you are ready, then just, yeah, get going, get working with Heidi and start managing your PMDD holistically and naturally. So
Awesome.
thank you. Oh, I just feel like I don't actually want to end the conversation because I'm really enjoying it. But I just, yeah, thank you so much because you have shared so much wisdom and so much gold. If you had one piece of advice for anybody listening who's resonated with today's topic and today's conversation, what would that be?
Oh,
To throw you on the spot. Oh, by the way, this wasn't a planned question.
um, God, one piece of advice. Yeah,
Two. It could be
pressure,
two if
man.
you really need.
Self-compassion, just practice some
Mm,
self-compassion, and you're not alone and you're not crazy. It's okay to ask for help. There's no shame, so please just reach out and find help. In fact, that's step one in my
mm,
PMDD roadmap, is gather your team, because it's a
mm.
beast and it needs to be addressed from so many different angles, and you need a lot of support. So please just reach out and ask for it.
I love that. Amazing. Heidi, thank you so much for your time.
Oh, thanks for having me, Jess. That's awesome.
You have been listening to Alive and Thriving by Inspired Life Collective. Did you know that you can help us to impact even more women on their well-being journey simply by subscribing to this podcast and leaving a review? If stress or anxiety, life or business has got you feeling inside like you are just busting to come back to life, then I invite you to book a discovery call with me so we can chat about how Inspired Life Collective private and online services might be able to support you through your journey. I am so grateful to you for being here and having me in your ears. So until the next episode, just remember that you were born to thrive.